Hello and welcome to Searching for Service, brought to you by Rotary District 5950 and 5960. I'm Kelly Kirk.
And I'm Joe Kirk.
And before we dive in to introduce our latest and greatest guest on this show, Joe is going to provide for us our mission.
Yeah, the mission of the show is to connect Rotarians and non-Rotarians with service projects. And the best way that we felt like we could do that is have amazing guests tell stories about how they got involved with Rotary, how they serve their communities, how they just all of the opportunities that are out there, and how they can best connect you to service. And we believe that Rotary is the best vehicle for service.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. So we want to welcome Luke Pinneo, who is the Director of Business Connect for Water. So thank you so much, Luke, for taking time out of your afternoon to have this show with us.
No problem. My pleasure.
And before we just dive into who Luke is, we do want to just thank everyone for their patience with Joe and I. So we have a little bit of coughing that's happening from a seasonal cold. So
kids,
here we go.
Kids in daycare.
Here we go. And again, back to Luke. Luke, we are so happy to have you on as our Searching for Service guest. So we're going to take this first section to get to know you. Where are you from?
Yeah, no, I'm first of all grateful to be here. So thank you for the invite. I am from the state of Washington, right next, about 20 minutes outside of Seattle, a town called Issaquah, but currently residing in a town called Port Orchard in the Puget Sound.
Beautiful.
Are you originally from there?
Yeah, born and raised in Issaquah, but then I went to college in San Diego. Then I lived in Colorado for 5 years, and then Portland for 3, then LA for 3, and I've spent a good amount of time in other places, but I'm back now here and call it the Puget Sound, but us natives we call it the Salish Sea, and happy to be here for the long term.
Awesome. Yeah, I heard it's an amazing area. Beautiful scenery.
Yeah. And so is it, we do want to just dive into also what is Business Connect for Water, but before we do that, is it that business that directed you to where you're at now?
Geographically?
Yes.
No, not necessarily. I work remotely, and the company is based out of Michigan, so I go out there to meet with the team fairly regularly. But no, I'm working remote.
Nice.
Yeah.
Brave new world where we can do that. Or did you do that pre-pandemic, or was that?
There's a lot of background to it, but I've mostly, for most of my vocational journey, I've done some degree of remote work.
My dad works remotely, and he goes, "The world discovered my secret of why I'm so efficient."
No kidding. Yeah, no kidding. It definitely has its struggles from time to time, but by and large, I mean, the benefits definitely outweigh the downsides.
Couldn't agree more.
And Luke, are you a Rotarian?
Oh boy, you had to ask. Not yet. That's the appropriate answer, I think I would.
Well, but remember, our audience are both Rotarians and non-Rotarians. So actually, it's just as valuable that you're not a Rotarian, but you do a lot of work with Rotarians, and we'll get into that, in the later parts of the interview. But tell us a little bit about that. How do you serve your community?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess a quick answer as to why I'm not a Rotarian yet is I shared, that I've lived in several different places, and, within Colorado, I lived in 3 different places, over the 5 years. And so I just haven't been, though I've worked with Rotary clubs since 2010 in different capacities. I've never been in a place really long enough with a long-term enough view to really settle down into a club. But that now that I'm here for the long haul, I'm looking forward to finding the local club and signing up. But I mean, water, I guess, we'll dive into water, and the short answer is that's how I've, the means that I've found to, put my hands to service. And, I've been blessed to merge that with a vocation, create a vocation around it.
Do you remember a project that you did that really kind of set you on the course of going, yeah, this is exactly how I want to serve and how I want to be part of my community, or how I want to help my community? Was there a project that kind of set you off when you were growing up?
Well, I mean, yeah, I'll say, and I'll just add too, there are other ways like locally that I have, gotten, put my hands to work in local community work, but around in the area of water, yeah, absolutely. In 2010, I right after the Haiti earthquake, I was working in Denver at a finance position, a company called Wealth Touch, and when the earthquake happened, I was confronted with the reality of what was going on the ground every day, watching Anderson Cooper, pulling babies out of rubble. 250,000 people just died instantly. And here I am, working to reconcile these, minimum client value was $3 million on our, and so reconciling these accounts that it didn't make sense. So I within, 10 days of existing in that space, I talked to my boss, and I ended up leaving the company with his blessing and buying a one-way ticket down to Haiti, and spent about 2.5 months down there. A lot of story around, where I ended up and how, but for the sake of time, I'll just say that the work that I did down there, I got tied into a group called Innovative Water Technologies, and they produce a unit called the Sunspring, and we did about a dozen installations of that unit down there. And I was confronted with the instant transformation that happens in communities when safe water is brought into the picture. And that was, it was a disaster relief environment. So there was some need that was in medical clinics, pop-up medical clinics, but then the long-term, more sustainable implementations at schools, senior centers, community centers. And so really, if I'm being honest, I didn't come away from that trip with like a burning passion for water. It's grown over time. But what I came away from that trip was sort of a low grade trauma, followed by certain amounts of PTSD that didn't allow me to leave the, what I found down there as a very real means of helping people, and a normal job after that was just not an option.
I love that. It's interesting. Sorry. It's interesting. It's a common theme amongst a lot of the people that we have on the show, that, one of the sparks that kind of directs them in a new way of service or direction for their business, or is an international project that they go on, and they get a little bit of context of how much, say, like fresh, clean water for, a community that doesn't have it, what it opens up to them in terms of opportunities and health and longevity, wealth, agriculture, food. I mean, you just go right down the line. It touches everything. And it's just astonishing the similarities that we've seen in our guests of how they're inspired. And so thank you for sharing that story. It's amazing.
Those are the stories that we're looking for, right? And it helps to make the connection point as well. And so thank you so much for sharing that. But I think at the core of all of it too is the need to help people, and that you are helping other individuals when they're at their greatest of need. So.
And it broke you from corporate America.
Yeah, no kidding.
You're like, yeah, regular job, no thanks.
It's kind of a nice little frame of reference, right? Like you're sitting there going, well, hold on a second. This seems silly. There's so much bigger need out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I was a accounting and a finance major and double in college. And then, and I've still applied that to different areas of my work following Haiti. But yeah, going and working for, Shell Oil or just some random corporation was not an option.
We have got about a minute and a half left here. why don't you share what has been the most satisfying and gratifying act of service that you've been able to do thus far?
Oh, well, there's lots of on the ground work, but I'll say this, the culmination of bringing Business Connect for Water to bringing it to life has been quite satisfying, in creating a platform through which organizations and individuals can get an objective lens, a technology agnostic lens to look through in determining what solution is appropriate for their environments. So, since Haiti, I worked on both the buying and the selling side for different manufacturers, and realized it's a great challenge to interact with somebody representing a manufacturer that isn't informing the conversation based on their own bias. So we've created a platform that has over 200 water solutions on it that organizations can come and really, assess for themselves what's best for their needs. And Business Connect, because we're a for-profit group, has funded the development of it and is committed to sustaining and maintaining its relevance. So that's been really satisfying.
Well, want to talk about a good segue into the
perfect.
next
It's absolutely
segment.
perfect.
This is a perfect way out, because we'll get much more into the Business Connect for Water in the next segment. But for now,
as a reminder, you're listening to Searching for Service. I'm Kelly Kirk.
And I'm Joe Kirk, and we'll see you on the next segment.
Hello, and welcome back to Searching for Service, brought to you by Rotary District 5950 and 5960. I'm Kelly Kirk.
And I'm Joe Kirk.
And as a reminder, you can find us on your favorite podcast platforms. And
we'd like you to like, comment, and 5-star reviews.
If you are tuning in for the first time, we have our guest, Luke Pinneo, who is the Director of Business Connect for Water. And our last section, we really just took some time to get to know Luke and how he saw himself serving and volunteering, and how that has led him to what he is doing for business now with Business Connect for Water. So we want to take this section and really get into the meat and potatoes of Business Connect for Water. So Luke, can you just remind our listeners, those who are just tuning in for the first time, what is Business Connect for Water?
Yeah, so Business Connect for Water is a platform that was developed by, it was a company that I started about 3 or 4 years ago, and it was originally called World Thirst Solutions. And then about a year ago, after several years of knowing the team over at Business Connect, they acquired my company and have brought it into theirs. And now we're creating what the vision at World Thirst Solutions was within Business Connect. And so now that is called Business Connect for Water. So, and what that is it's really quite simple. It's really just a platform that is committed to curating a updated and relevant database of not only what solutions are available primarily for developing world safe water access in the areas of filtration and treatment. Currently, we're only focusing on filtration and treatment, though there are others like water testing, GIS, storage, transport, other ancillary items that we will be adding. So a database of what's available in the water space, and then another database of organizations that we have almost 300 organizations in that database, which is intended to really show what groups are using said solutions and what sort of activities in what regions of the world, and providing third party ratings, if it's Charity Navigator or other forms of verification, so that people can see we want to see a group that's doing water filtration at a household level in the country of Guatemala. Search, and it will show what groups are there, and then those are two of the 4 pillars. The other 2 pillars are a knowledge hub where we're curating various assets. So articles, journals, white paper studies, infographics, and then the fourth one being a consultation piece. So really, what solutions are available? Who's using the solutions in implementing water projects across the globe? What resources, in terms of what resources can we provide to help organizations understand better the nature of their need and what solutions might be a good fit? And then offering to come alongside in a form of consultation to walk with them in determining how to best implement and get the best value.
Fascinating.
So I love the power of this organization, because you think about it, like if I'm somebody that's listening right now and you've always wanted to take on a water project of, anywhere, like just pick a location, you can say, okay, has there been water projects done in this location previously? Is it in this database? What type of products did they use? What was the need? Is it that they actually need the water, or do they need filtration? And it really helps probably, really jumpstart those organizations in the right direction and not have to go through all of the landmines along the way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a big think tank essentially of, people doing water projects, and you're kind of at the hub. And then correct me if I'm wrong, then you guys provide the resources on the back end, right? Like you could order the resources.
So Business Connect for Water is committed to those four things that I share with you. Business Connect is the parent company, and they are I'm on the team as well. I guess we are a master distributor of a small portion of the products that are on the database. So we have over 200 products in the database, maybe 25. I think we have just about 10 manufacturers that we're partnered with. And previous to COVID, we had a distributorship established in over 70 countries. So and that got cut more than half during COVID, and now we're rebuilding just the distribution network, because what's at the core of Business Connect is empowering local distributors to sell and distribute products that we have brought into our portfolio, our suite of solutions, and then they have access to them and can deliver them to their community for good value and give themselves an income.
Well, and what an interesting component of the entire process that gets probably overlooked a lot is, how do you get the products, and how do you get, how do you identify the right ones? How do you identify? And it's just fascinating as we're learning about this, is how important this component is, because you can't do anything effectively without it.
Right. You can set forth a mission, right? You decide that you want to go to Guatemala or, another country, Haiti, wherever, and do this, but you have to know where to get the resources to do it. Mm-hmm. So that's oftentimes been the question, because we've had a couple of guests on here who have talked about their trips overseas and their missions with,
and they've talked about the execution component of it versus not the, how did you get the products?
How did you get the products? Like, where did it come from? So,
more often than not, unless we're dealing with like a drill, and I've worked with about 23 different well water drilling machines over the years. But unless it's a drill, a lot of times people are just packing them in their suitcases and, checking, everybody 2 suitcases, 50 pounds max with household water treatment solutions. And but no, you're right. There's not oftentimes it's not as streamlined as it could be.
Well, I think now would be a really great time to talk a little bit about how. I mean, it's pretty obvious how we got connected into Rotary, but specifically, how did the connection get made? Was it a service project? Was it an introduction from somebody that, in the business world? Like, how did Business Connect for Water, or I'm not sure if the connection existed before you were acquired. How did that connection get made?
With who?
With,
let's say Lloyd, because Lloyd was who had made the connection here to have you on the show.
Yeah, that's
Well,
quick
I
and
was
easy.
actually asking how you got connected to Rotary in the first place in terms of being the conduit for helping them with service projects.
Well, yeah. Well, how do I answer that? Well, Business Connect as a company has worked with Rotary in various projects over the years.
Okay.
Most recently with Ukraine, and we can get more into that in a minute. But since coming back from Haiti, right out the gates of coming back from Haiti, I started to work for that company called Innovative Water Technologies. I was a raft guide in Colorado, and my part-time job was selling these SunSpring units, and over half of the SunSprings I sold were through Rotary groups that I learned. I learned the intimately the process of taking advantage of regional grants, global grants, and getting the most out of the money of the clubs that they were able to contribute. It was incredible the amount of support that at an international level they're able to get. So I've been working since 2011 probably with Rotary, but Business Connect, I've only been with them for a year. So.
And then you met Lloyd at the international conference here in the last month. So that was the connection for the show.
Yeah, and we had the main booth of over I think over 300 vendors. I think we were asked by Rotary International to set up it was so big that people were confusing us for the information center, and probably like half of people came up and they're like, "Hey, I'm looking for such and such organization," and literally almost half of the people that came up to us were confused what we were, because it was all four sides wide open, and Lloyd was just one of the people that came up and started chatting.
Was wondering where something else was.
Probably no. And then he was pretty quick in telling me about the show and thinking that there would be a spot to share the story of Business Connect. So
and we have connected the dots now.
Here we are. That's awesome. What was your biggest takeaway from the international convention?
Biggest takeaway.
Other than there's a ton of people there.
A ton of people. Yeah. And from what I understand, it was one of the smaller years too, but it was, this was my first year at a convention, and we had 7 of, myself and my coworkers. So we had a great time. Australia, Melbourne in particular is awesome. But I think just what I'll say is without really knowing how to put words to it, just the genuine nature of by and large, almost all the Rotarians that I met in their genuine interest in their lives and continuing to commit their lives to acts of service, and that is it's contagious, and you get confirmed in your path when others are confirming it in themselves. I'll say.
Love it.
That's great. What a great way to end this segment. And just as a reminder, you're listening to Searching for Service. I'm Joe Kirk.
I'm Kelly Kirk.
Stay tuned.
Hello and welcome back to Searching for Service, brought to you by Rotary District 5950 and 5960. I'm Kelly Kirk.
And I'm Joe Kirk.
As a reminder, you can find us on your favorite podcast platforms, and
you can find us by searching for Service.
It's a tongue twister.
It is searching.
We also love 5 stars,
5
the gold
stars.
reviews.
Yeah.
So if you are tuning in for the first time, we have our guest, Luke Pinneo, who is the Business Connect for Water Director.
And it's been a fascinating interview so far. And, we've been talking about how you forget that these projects, there's a lot of planning and education and understanding and ordering of actual products that go into it. And, we were talking a little bit off air here about, how cool is it that there is a for-profit organization that, obviously partners that with Rotary, that has its heart in the right place and we were just talking about how, I think there's so many corporations out there that could really learn from this business model of just having something at the core. And you shared a little bit about when Business Connect acquired your business. So tell us a little bit about how that happened and why you chose them.
Yeah, no, it happened about a year ago. We started the process, and then, year and 3 months, and then the process ended about a year ago. And I began the transition in June of last year. And they were before they were interested in an acquisition. I was a customer of theirs, and then before that, I was friends of theirs. Of several people in leadership there, and I admired their business model, and in one sense you could have looked at it as they were potential competitors to me in the space, because we were both building out our suite of solutions and these relationships, but we were both doing it in a for-profit platform, and so we had similar views as to how, and views on sustainability, and kind of feelings towards the great irony of charities giving to people money by themselves going out and putting their hands out and receiving. Just it's important that to set up distribution and sell products through local distributors, that we ourselves are acting as a business, and profit is nothing more than an indicator of health of the business, and that's it. And so we're not reliant on the generosity of others. We're reliant on our success as measured by profit. So they were on a very short list of there was 3 that I saw that potentially if there could either merge or acquire with Welfare Solutions, and then they approached me, and it's been great since being a part of the team.
That's awesome. It's always nice when the transition can go smooth, and it seems like the right type of partnership, because you're doing it for the right reasons. How about you tell us some success stories that are your favorites, either for the business prior to being acquired or since?
Yeah, well, I'll just hone in on kind of one pathway to success stories. There's been multiple success stories, but recently Business Connect, since the beginning of the Ukraine war, has partnered with, I know it's at this point, I think it's at least a half dozen Rotary clubs who have taken advantage of the I don't know what the formal title of the offering is from Rotary International, but Rotary International has designated $25,000 in available funds per club for them to mobilize aid in some form that they either comes through a filter that Rotary International has set, or it's an area of that they're passionate about. Well, Business Connect has come alongside these groups in not only connecting them with on the ground support, but in putting together several, almost prepackaged pallets of various forms of water filtration and treatment combinations that are able to address, standard biological and chemical contaminants, as well as unique ones that are present in times of war, especially modern war. There's certain contaminants in the ground that are really troublesome, and so BC has been able to help groups in mobilizing with that $25,000, directing a pallet worth of water, safe water.
So if you don't mind, like, would you kind of explain, like, what's the process for you guys to identify, what somebody like Ukraine would need? So you understand the location, and it seems like the logical one, but you'd mentioned a bunch of the other characteristics of war type of chemicals and things like that they would have to treat out?
Yeah, sure. It's, the two questions that I always ask when I'm getting involved with an organization in a partnership or a consultation relationship is questions around testing, water testing, and then tracking. So do they have something in place, a mechanism in place to track the success of their implemented strategy? Have they been tracking, the health of the community prior? Are they committed to ongoing tracking? Otherwise yourself and your constituents aren't going to know whether or not this is actually helpful.
You don't know what problem you're solving.
And it can be an ugly thing. I mean, I tell organizations, you're not going to like what you see when you start testing. I guarantee it. You're going to probably see that, your solution may not be addressing the problem as comprehensively as you hope. And then testing. You got to know what's in the water, right? I mean, oftentimes people will, prepare for, certain levels of what they can count on as, biological contaminants and bacteria, bacteria, protozoa, cryptosporidium, but they maybe aren't prepared for viruses that are present, or certainly, chemicals, or now we're dealing with microplastics and PFAs and this is all these things we track on Business Connect for Water too. Just on that solutions database, how effective is it against bacteriological or biological contaminants, chemical contaminants, and we're now adding microplastics and other forms of contaminants so that people can know how effective they are.
Well, and just efficiency of dollar use, right? Like, I mean, that's where I just go back to. I'm like, you're not putting good money after bad. To the best of your ability.
Yeah, absolutely. And so testing is very important. Sorry, my dog was howling in the background there.
No, it's all right.
Kind of squirrel.
I've had the issue too. It's all good. All good.
It's interesting too. So then how do you guys collect data on the back end? So like, is it kind of part of your agreements? Is it, do you collect data as part of your service out? Does that make sense? Like, as you're providing things, are you getting data back?
Not yet, but we are. No, we make recommendations. So we go only so far as to make a series of recommendations for if it's solutions or like I said, the first two questions being testing and tracking. If they're not, we can't force them to implement these things, but we can speak very clearly to the benefits of them and, of groups that have utilized them, that have experienced success, long-term success. But we are currently in early stage development of a white label GIS package that organizations can, for much lower cost than creating it themselves, they can come in through Business Connect, drag and drop their logo, drag and drop their company name, pick from a pre-selected list of survey questions so they can know as they're going through and surveying their community, on various, health, if it's, water implementations or other things as well. They can curate their own experience and then see, track the progress through a dashboard. They can communicate that, to their constituents, their donors. And so we want to make that process really easy, but we don't force them. No, we just, the goal here is to, a rising tide raises all boats, right? So we want to shine light on what we want to help encourage, and bend the arc in the direction of positive technological developments in the solution side and positive, growths in efficiencies on the organization side as well. So,
well, and I mean, that could be something, for the future too, is that you go, okay, great. We get you so prepared on the front end. It would be great to understand what the long-term impacts are. Were we right? Were we right? That's going to be the nice thing. And then being able to curtail that based on the data coming back. I'm sure technology will make that a lot easier too going forward. But we've got about 30 seconds left here. What what one learning opportunity are you excited to tackle?
Well, I'm there. There's learning opportunity. I'll just say opportunity within Business Connect is adding. We're looking forward to adding a little toggle switch on the solutions page where you can
I love it.
Little things in life.
You can
Keep
toggle into well, it's the toggle. We won't force this on people, but it's the BC commentary toggle where they can hear from us our subjective perspective on solutions, not just objective.
That's a wonderful, easy thing to implement. It sounds like, and I'm excited to see
and we can
that.
talk about that for the future vision.
Yeah.
I'm Kelly Kirk.
And I'm Joe Kirk.
You're listening to Searching for Service.
Be right back.
Hello and welcome back to Searching for Service, brought to you by Rotary District 5950 and 5960. I'm Kelly Kirk.
I'm Joe Kirk.
If you're tuning in for the first time, we have our lovely guest, Luke Pinneo, who is the Director of Business Connect for Water. And in this last section, we're going to really dive into what is the future vision that he sees for his business, for Business Connect. So let's go ahead and dive in. Luke, why don't you share with us? Let's actually just piggyback off of what we were talking about with this little toggle feature so you're talking about this as an opportunity, and to kind of tie this into like future visions, just give our listeners a quick reminder of what you were talking about and how that can play into the future vision for Business Connect for Water.
Yeah, sure. So I called it just the BC commentary toggle. So we don't, because on the Business Connect for Water is a platform that is related to Business Connect, the mother company, but at Business Connect for Water, we try to maintain as objective of a perspective as possible, because we recognize that we don't want to get in the way of people making their decision, right? We want to recommend based on objectively what the manufacturer claims their technology is capable of doing. That being said, what we also understand is that at the end of the day, the primary product that we're selling to organizations, individuals, institutions is trust. And when as we build this brand, we're earning the trust that extends, from one solution purchase. That one works. We've supported it well. We've been there, through the process. So they try out another solution. So, in a different area of need, and then another solution. So, and we've feedback that we've gotten is that, while we're trying to maintain objectivity, we've gotten feedback that says, no, we actually want to know what you think, our lead researcher, PhD, Jamie Harris, what does she think about these, products? But we don't want to force it on them. So here's a toggle where you can say, here's our commentary. That's this in development. This is probably, early, Q1 of next year when we'll be there. But I love
the teaser though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a great, I do think it makes a ton of sense for you though. It's one thing to stay kind of neutral, and I think you're right there in the sense of you don't want to discourage anybody from trying to solve some solution, come up with some solutions. However, I do think that there's you're building this huge database and just legacy of programs that have worked or don't work, or there's new products and it's just constantly changing, and to kind of not utilize that expertise to me would be nuts. But so yeah. I think it'll be a toggle switch for a little while, but I could see it in the future where it's just no, we've done this so many times that it isn't. What else do you? Yeah. So you talk a little bit about some of the other pillars that you're looking to fill in, right? You've talked about water testing and remind me on what the other one was. It was water testing and
So originally it was filtration, treatment, sourcing, storage, transport.
Thank you. Yep.
And then adding to that testing, GIS, Global Information Services, and then other ancillary products that have benefit for water projects.
So we'll come at it from the angle of Rotary International and say, going forward in the future, how can Business Connect for Water, how is it going to be serving Rotary at a higher level than it is today? Not to say that it isn't at a high level today. I'm just like, what's the goal and objective?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think the best way to answer that is that we're committed to the next 3 international conventions. We're already signed up, and we're in increasing capacity and responsibility in the areas of presenting WASH. So that's really exciting. But where we're currently at is we're helping clubs, like I shared, clubs that are wanting to do work in Ukraine and other areas of the world too. But really, our posture is one of receiving and listening, and where is the interest, where is the need, and how can we facilitate your interest and help guide that process. So currently that's been at the club level. And at the international level, we've gotten involved in the convention, and but where that will all develop, time will tell. But we want to continue to curate an experience that consistently adds value for those that we're partnering with that are at the tip of the spear, and Rotary is one of those groups. So we want to continue to listen.
It's such a large organization. It's no brainer, right? Like, I mean, for you guys, when you're looking at your numbers, you're going, how many members in Rotary? How many projects do they do?
Yeah.
Holy smokes. How many dollars?
There's just so much. There's so much serving.
Yeah. And so much opportunity. I mean, and water's the silver bullet, right? I mean, I think that you've probably identified that in your time and going, without water, nothing's possible. Mm-hmm. I mean, truly.
It is. Yeah. I will add though, and this is another little teaser, and we're in the early stages of developing the structure of what we're hoping we're planning, I'll say, to develop into, and that's Business Connect for Water is being built out as almost a template to be able to the platform and all that's gone in the back end in developing it. The template being one that can be easily replicated when the time comes into a Business Connect for sanitation, Business Connect for hygiene, Business Connect for energy, Business Connect for food. And so creating this ecosystem where each one of those elements is sustained on the 4 pillars of what's available in solutions, who's doing the work, what kind of knowledge assets do we need access to, and can you help us? So in all those areas, we're looking to grow into eventually.
Well, and what's really great for the partnership between Rotary and Business Connect as it expands into that is those are all areas of focus for Rotary. So it's fascinating.
Most definitely. Yeah.
Like, wow, it's not just the water component that we align in. It's just, it'll continue to align. Yeah. So the more successful that we are in partnering on the water side, that just sets the platform up for the future. That's really exciting. Like, that's a really cool future piece. And I love that relationship. Like, I mean, it just really ties the relationship in really nicely. What do you hope your role is in all of this in the future? Sail off into the sunset in your sailors. What do you call it? Sailors Cove? Or is it
sailors? The Sailor's Sea.
Sailor's Sea. Yeah.
What is my role? I, not to get, too, spiritual with it, but I like to enter each day with open hand, and if, I got another day working in the space, or I see a timeline of, the next year building out these projects, but, to put, I want to be nimble to fit into the, whatever role is best suited to my abilities. And if that's, I do miss travel, COVID makes me miss travel, and getting on the ground more and going to, Africa, South America. And so I don't know, we'll see. But right now I'm committed to building out this platform and then getting the replication of the others going and before handing off.
you'll probably figure something else to get it.
I was just you put it out into the universe, Luke.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
And once you know how, it's one of those things like you can't unlearn how. And so you just start going, oh, I can apply it there. I can apply it here. I can apply it there.
Yeah.
It probably becomes a little bit of a sickness almost. We got a couple more minutes left of, what. So here's a really great question. We ask this to most of our guests is, most of our listeners are either people that are Rotarians, but a big portion are non-Rotarians and people just looking to get into service. What piece of advice would you give to somebody that's listening to this show of getting started into service?
Well, it might be a bit unconventional, but I mean, I would suggest working on your general awareness and your posture and walking through the world. For example, just today I moved. This is my new house. Last night was my first night in this new house. I just bought my first house.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, and I couldn't find my coffee this morning. So I had to walk down to the coffee shop just 5 minutes down the street, and I found one where I met an amazing gentleman that was the barista, and all the proceeds go to helping homeless youth in the community. And we just struck up a conversation, being aware and having a certain level of awareness combined with context and understanding that others in traveling helps with this, right? Seeing circumstances within which others are existing, but also being open to the reciprocity that exists there and serving others. And when I go travel and I'm doing water project implementations, I always feel when I come back like I'm the one that benefited most from the experience.
That might be my favorite answer to that question. I'm not joking. I mean, it was just a complete right turn of going, you got to have some self-awareness of how you are projecting yourself out in the world. And then to reverse engineer that back to the need for whatever's out there. Yeah. That's such a great answer. Luke, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. Kelly, if you want to take us out.
Thank you so much for listening to Searching for Service. As a reminder, it's time to stop searching
and start serving.